Imagine a world where the gleaming Twin Towers still define the New York City skyline, their thousands of occupants returning home safely every evening. Picture Pripyat not as a ghost town, but as a vibrant, bustling city, its children playing in parks untouched by radioactive shadows. Envision the Titanic, that legendary liner, completing her maiden voyage, her passengers disembarking to cheers and new beginnings, over 1,500 souls spared a watery grave. Think of 7 brave astronauts, including a beloved teacher, waving triumphantly from orbit, their mission a beacon of hope, not a national tragedy. What if an ancient Roman city, Pompeii, continued to thrive for centuries, its people never knowing the fiery wrath of Vesuvius, becoming an unbroken link to the classical world? Consider millions upon millions in the early 20th century who never coughed their first symptom of a devastating global flu, families remaining whole and societies unshaken. And what if a majestic airship, the Hindenburg, landed as gently as a dream, heralding a golden age of lighter-than-air travel instead of a fiery demise? Fasten your seatbelts, because we're jumping through dimensions. Number 7. The Titanic completes her maiden voyage in style. In our timeline, the story of the RMS Titanic is a chilling legend. On the night of April 14, 1912, this marvel of engineering deemed unsinkable struck an iceberg in the frigid North Atlantic. In less than 3 hours, she was gone, taking with her more than 1,500 souls, a tragedy compounded by a shortage of lifeboats and a series of unfortunate communication mishaps. The world watched in horror as a symbol of luxury and progress became a tomb at the bottom of the ocean. But let's peek into a different reality, just a slight nudge of fate away. In this dimension, a simple, almost trivial oversight from our world was correct. The ship's lookouts, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, had their binoculars. You see, in our timeline, the key to the locker containing the binoculars was accidentally taken ashore by Second Officer David Blair when he was reassigned at the last minute. Without them, spotting hazards in the vast dark ocean was a far tougher task. In this alternate April 1912, however, First Officer Murdoch, doing a final check of equipment before sailing from Southampton, noticed the missing key. Quick call, a hurried delivery from Blair, who hadn't left port yet, and the binoculars were in the hands of the lookouts in the crow's nest. With this crucial tool, Fleet's eyes, sharp as they were, became even more effective. On that fateful night, the haze on the horizon was pierced much earlier. "Iceberg right ahead," he cried. But this time, there were precious extra minutes. Captain Smith, alerted with more advance warning, ordered the engines to full astern and the helm hard as starboard sooner. The massive ship, responding slowly but surely, began to turn. Instead of a fatal glancing blow that ripped open multiple compartments, the Titanic either scraped by with minor manageable damage to only 1 or 2 forward compartments, well within her design limits to stay afloat, or missed the colossal iceberg altogether by a comfortable margin. Passengers felt a slight shudder, perhaps. A few curious souls came on deck to see what the fuss was about, only to be told it was a minor precautionary maneuver. The rest of the voyage was uneventful. The Titanic, a little delayed perhaps from slowing down in the ice field, steamed majestically into New York Harbor a day or 2 later than scheduled, greeted by cheering crowds, unaware of the bullet they had dodged. Her passengers, including luminaries like John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus with his wife Ida, disembarked, ready to continue their lives and legacies. Astor, in this timeline, went on to further invest in real estate and scientific research, living to see his hotel empire expand. Guggenheim continued his mining ventures, contributing significantly to American industry. The Strausses, devoted as ever, celebrated many more anniversaries. The unsinkable Titanic became a legend for a different reason. For her grandeur and reliable service. She continued to ply the Atlantic route for many years, a testament to shipbuilding excellence. The near miss, once revealed, did lead to discussions about safety in ice fields, perhaps even accelerating the implementation of the International Ice Patrol, but without the gut-wrenching loss of life. The thousands of stories that ended abruptly in our timeline simply continued, weaving richer, fuller tapestries in this alternate world. The Titanic became a beloved workhorse of the White Star Line, eventually retiring gracefully after a long and distinguished career. Her name synonymous with resilience, not disaster. Number 6. The Hindenburg floats into a future of airships. The images are seared into our collective memory. The colossal German Zeppelin LZ-129 Hindenburg, erupting into a terrifying ball of fire as it attempted to moor at Lakehurst, New Jersey, on May 6, 1937. 36 people, passengers and crew, perished in the inferno, and with them, the dream of commercial, lighter-than-air travel died a spectacular, tragic death. The disaster was blamed on static electricity igniting leaking hydrogen. Now, let's shift dimensions again. It's the same evening, May 6, 1937. The Hindenburg, after a smooth Atlantic crossing, circles over New Jersey. In our timeline, a thunderstorm had delayed its landing, and the air was charged with stead. Crew was anxious. But in this alternate reality, the weather system moved through just a little faster. The skies cleared completely an hour before the scheduled mooring. The air was calm, the humidity lower, reducing the risk of a static spark. As the mighty airship approached the mast, Commander Pruss and his crew executed the landing with textbook precision. The grounding ropes were dropped, and this time, they made firm and immediate contact with the wet ground, dissipating any accumulated static electricity harmlessly. Or perhaps, in an even simpler twist, a slightly different composition of the airship's outer skin doping compound, one less prone to ignition or static buildup, a minor variation in the formula, meant that any stray spark simply fizzled out with no effect. The Hindenburg settled gently onto its mooring mast. The gangway was lowered, and smiling passengers thrilled by their luxurious transatlantic journey disembarked onto American soil. Photographers snapped pictures, not of a disaster, but of a triumph of engineering and international travel. The Hindenburg, a symbol of German ingenuity, became a regular and welcome sight in the skies over New York and Lakehurst. With this continued success, the age of the airship didn't end, it flourished. Newer, even larger, Zeppelins were built, some perhaps eventually transitioning to non-flammable helium as extraction technologies improved or golding tensions eased, allowing Germany access to American helium reserves. Imagine a world where transcontinental and intercontinental travel in the 1940s and 50s wasn't just about planes, but also about these majestic, silent giants gliding through the sky. They offered a different kind of travel, slower, yes, but incredibly spacious, with dining rooms, observation decks, and private cabins offering unparalleled views. The Hindenburg itself completed many more transatlantic voyages, fostering goodwill and tourism. Its success spurred further innovation in airship design, leading to safer, more efficient models. Perhaps these airships played unique roles in exploration, cargo transport to remote areas, or even luxury sky cruises. The fiery end at Lakehurst never happened, and instead, the Hindenburg became a cherished icon of a golden age of airship travel, retiring after decades of faithful service, her name evoking wonder, not tragedy. The skies of this alternate world are just a little more magical, punctuated by the graceful silhouettes of these gentle giants. Number 5. Pompeii's people outsmart a volcano. In 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius, a seemingly dormant guardian over the Bay of Naples, awoke with cataclysmic fury. The Roman cities of Pompeii, Herculaneum, and Stabiae were buried under tons of volcanic ash and pumice. Thousands of inhabitants, caught unawares or unable to escape, perished instantly, their bodies eerily preserved by the very material that killed them. Pompeii became a lost city, a snapshot of Roman life frozen in time by disaster. But journey with us to an alternate 79 AD. For weeks, even months, leading up to that fateful August, the earth around Vesuvius had been trembling more violently than usual. Springs and wells dried up, and strange fumes were reported by farmers on the volcano's slopes. In our timeline, these warnings were largely misinterpreted or ignored. But in this dimension, a few key individuals made different choices. Perhaps Pliny the Elder, the Roman author and commander of the fleet at Misenum, known for his insatiable curiosity about natural phenomena, took these precursor events more seriously. Instead of just observing from afar initially, he personally investigated the earlier, stronger tremors and gas emissions. His astute observations, coupled with reports from local magistrates, who were more alarmed in this reality, led to a growing sense of unease and a more corrective stance. Maybe a series of particularly strong earthquakes, just days before the main eruption, caused significant, but not yet deadly damage in Pompeii, serving as an undeniable final warning. The local authorities, perhaps spurred by a direct and urgent recommendation from a figure like Pliny, or by their own heightened sense of caution, made a crucial decision: a phased, then mandatory, evacuation of Pompeii and the surrounding towns. It wasn't easy. Many were reluctant to leave their homes and businesses. But with roads still passable and the sea calm, a significant portion of the population began to move, carrying what they could. When Vesuvius finally unleashed its devastating pyroclastic flows, the streets of Pompeii were far emptier. Thousands of lives were saved. Instead of becoming tombs, Pompeii and Herculaneum were largely abandoned cities, their inhabitants resettled in other parts of Campania or further afield in the Roman Empire. These Pompeian refugees carried their skills, culture, and stories with them, enriching the communities they joined. The knowledge of their city's art, engineering, and daily life wasn't lost, and then, rediscovered centuries later, it continued as a living tradition, albeit transplanted. When the ash finally settled, Pompeii was still buried, but as a monument to a narrow escape, not a mass grave. Archaeologists in this dimension, excavating Pompeii much later, would still find a perfectly preserved Roman city, but their findings would tell a story of foresight and survival alongside the details of everyday life. The human tragedy, the poignant plaster casts of victims, would be largely absent. Instead, the focus would be on the incredible preservation of the city itself, and historical records would detail the successful, albeit challenging, relocation of its people. The legacy of Pompeii in this world is one of resilience, a stark reminder of nature's power, but also of humanity's ability to heed warnings and act to save itself. The vibrant culture of Pompeii wasn't extinguished. It simply moved, adapted, and continued to flourish. Number 4. The Spanish flu becomes a footnote, not a pandemic. The 1918 to 1920 influenza pandemic, often misnamed the Spanish flu, as wartime censorship in belligerent nations suppressed news of it, while neutral Spain reported openly, was one of the deadliest natural disasters in human history. It infected an estimated 500 million people worldwide, about a third of the planet's population at the time, and killed an estimated 20 to 50 million victims, possibly more. Came in multiple waves, hitting young, healthy adults particularly hard, and its spread was undoubtedly exacerbated by the massive troop movements of World War I. Now, let's imagine an alternate 1918. The first whispers of an unusually virulent flu strain still emerge in Haskell County, Kansas, or at Camp Funston. But in this reality, a combination of factors tips the scales towards containment. Perhaps the local physician, Dr. Loring Minor, whose warnings in our timeline went largely unheeded by federal authorities, was more persistent, or he had a colleague in a higher position who listened and acted swiftly. Or maybe the initial mutation of the H1N1 virus in this dimension was just slightly less transmissible at the outset, giving public health officials a crucial window of opportunity. Crucially, let's say a more coordinated and decisive public health response was enacted before the virus hitched rides on troop ships to Europe and around the globe. Imagine if, based on unusually high and severe flu cases at a few army camps, a strict quarantine was immediately imposed on those facilities. Perhaps a newly established, more empowered federal health agency, learning lessons from earlier, smaller outbreaks in this timeline, had the authority and resources to implement widespread public health measures, mask wearing, school closures, bans on public gatherings. In a vote, the Spanish flu never quite becomes the Spanish flu. It remains a series of localized, severe flu outbreaks that are, through concerted effort and perhaps a little luck with the virus's initial properties, largely contained within specific regions of the United States or its point of origin. The devastating global spread via troop movements is drastically curtailed. While still a serious health concern in the affected areas, it doesn't explode into a worldwide pandemic. Consequences are immense. Tens of millions of lives are saved globally. The devastating second and third waves that crippled nations in our timeline are either non-existent or significantly blunted. Families remain whole. The social and economic fabric of countries already reeling from World War I is not further shredded by mass illness and death. Post-war recovery is quicker and less painful. Children grow up with both parents. Communities don't suffer the loss of a significant portion of their young adult population. Furthermore, the successful containment of this potent influenza strain in this alternate 1918 provides a powerful lesson. It galvanizes investment in virology, epidemiology, and international public health cooperation much earlier. The world learns without paying the horrific price of millions of lives the importance of rapid response, quarantine, and scientific research in the face of new infectious diseases. The 20th century unfolds without the deep scar left by this particular pandemic, and humanity is better prepared for future viral threats because of the close call that was successfully managed. Number 3. The Challenger 7 return as national heroes, January 28, 1986. A date etched in sorrow for many. The Space Shuttle Challenger on mission STS-51L broke apart just 73 seconds after launch, live on television, shocking a nation and the world. All 7 crew members, Francis Dick Scobie, Michael J. Smith, Ronald McNair, Alison Onizuka, Judith Resnick, Gregory Jarvis, and Krista McAuliffe, the first teacher in space, were lost. The cause was a failure of an O-ring seal in the right solid rocket booster, made brittle by unexpectedly cold launch day temperatures. Let's step into a dimension where this heartbreak was averted. The night before the launch, the debate about the O-rings still rages. Engineers at Morton Thiokol, particularly Roger Boisjoly and Alan MacDonald, are deeply concerned about the cold. In our timeline, their warnings were tragically overruled. But in this alternate reality, one crucial thing changes. Perhaps a senior, an ace, a manager, like Jesse Moore or Lawrence Malloy, has a stronger moment of doubt, a gut feeling they can't ignore. Or Boisjoly's presentation of the data is even more starkly compelling that night. Maybe a key photograph of ice on the launch pad or a last-minute temperature reading from the booster itself is undeniably alarming. The decision is made. We are not launching tomorrow. The launch is postponed until weather conditions are more favorable, or until a more thorough inspection and potential minor repair of the O-ring seals can be completed. There's disappointment, of course, especially for Krista McAuliffe and the millions of schoolchildren eagerly waiting to see her teach from space. But it's a disappointment tempered with the understanding that safety comes first. A few days, or perhaps a week later, under warmer Florida skies and with engineers confident in the integrity of the boosters, Challenger roars to life. This time, the O-rings hold. The shuttle ascends flawlessly, a beautiful arc against the blue. On board, the crew gets to work. Krista McAuliffe delivers her televised lessons from orbit, her infectious enthusiasm captivating students across the globe. She demonstrates simple science experiments in zero gravity, talks about life on the shuttle, and shares the breathtaking views of Earth. She becomes an even greater inspiration, a symbol of the wonder of discovery and the importance of education. The mission is a resounding success. The TDRSB satellite is deployed, experiments are conducted, and after a week in orbit, Challenger glides to a perfect landing. Crew of STS-51L return as heroes, celebrated for their courage and for reigniting public passion for space exploration. The Teacher in Space program is hailed as a triumph and continues bringing more civilians into orbit, fostering a deeper connection between NASA and the public. The near catastrophe, revealed internally after the successful mission, perhaps the O-ring issue was discovered during post-flight inspections as being closer to failure than anyone liked, leads to a rigorous internal review and improvements in decision-making processes and booster design at NASA, but without the trauma and setback of a lost crew and shuttle. The space program maintains its momentum. Public support remains high, and the lessons about engineering vigilance are learned proactively. The names Scobie, Smith, McNair, Onizuka, Resnick, Jarvis, and McAuliffe are remembered not for tragedy, but for a mission that inspired a generation just a little bit further safely. Number 2. Pripyat thrives as Chernobyl's reactor, remains tame. In the early hours of April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Soviet Ukraine went critical. A catastrophic power surge during a poorly designed and improperly executed safety test led to a series of explosions. The reactor core was exposed, spewing vast quantities of radioactive material into the atmosphere, contaminating large swaths of Ukraine, West, Russia, and even parts of Western Europe. The nearby city of Pripyat, built to house the plant's workers and their families, was evacuated and remains a ghost town, a chilling monument to the world's worst nuclear disaster. The human cost, in terms of immediate deaths, long-term health issues like cancers, and displaced lives, is immense and still debated. Now, let's shift to an alternate 1986. It's the night of April 25th, and the safety test on Reactor 4 is still planned. However, a key difference exists. Perhaps years earlier, a less severe incident at another RBMK-type reactor, the flawed design used at Chernobyl, had already exposed the dangerous positive void coefficient flaw, leading to mandatory design modifications and stricter operating protocols across the entire Soviet nuclear fleet. Or more simply, on this specific night, the chain of command leading up to the test is just a bit more cautious. Anatoly Dyatlov, the deputy chief engineer overseeing the test, is still present. But in this dimension, either his superiors have issued more stringent, non-negotiable guidelines for the test parameters, or Dyatlov himself, perhaps having had a recent close call or a stern warning about safety discipline, adheres much more rigidly to the established safer procedures. When the reactor's power output drops too low, instead of recklessly trying to raise it against regulations by withdrawing an unsafe number of control rods, The decision is made to either postpone the test or to conduct it within much safer, albeit less ambitious parameters. Or perhaps a crucial safety system, one that was disabled in our timeline, remains active and automatically shuts down the reactor when instability is first detected long before it can escalate. Test is either completed without incident, revealing nothing dramatic, or it's aborted safely. The operators in the control room might grumble about a frustrating night, but they go home. The reactor continues to operate normally. The city of Pripyat sleeps soundly. Its 50,000 inhabitants wake up the next morning to a normal day. Children go to school. Workers head to their jobs. Some at the power plant, which is just another industrial facility, providing energy and employment. The parks remain full of life. The apartment buildings vibrant. In this alternate world, Chernobyl is just a name of a power plant, perhaps known for its reliable energy production. The exclusion zone never exists. The vast agricultural lands around it remain fertile and productive. Thousands of people are spared radiation-induced illnesses and premature death. The massive environmental contamination is averted. The Soviet Union doesn't face the enormous economic and political fallout from such a disaster. Perhaps, without the shock of Chernobyl, the global push for nuclear safety reforms is a bit slower. But it also means that nuclear power itself isn't as demonized. Advancements in reactor design might continue, driven by efficiency and economics rather than by the urgent need to correct flaws revealed by a catastrophe. Pripyat, in this dimension, is a thriving, mature city today. Its residents having lived full lives, their children growing up without the shadow of a radioactive cloud, their environment clean and safe. It's a testament to what happens when safety protocols are followed, or when design flaws are caught and corrected before they can cause unimaginable harm. Number 1. A September morning unfolds peacefully as the towers stand tall. September 11th, 2001. A day of profound shock and sorrow. 19 terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airplanes. 2 were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, causing their collapse. Another hit the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. The 4th crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after passengers and crew bravely fought back. Nearly 3,000 innocent lives were lost in a matter of hours. The attacks triggered global ripples, years of conflict, and changed the world as we knew it. Let's venture into a dimension where this monumental tragedy was prevented. Plot by Algerdi is still in motion. The hijackers are in place. But in this alternate reality, a crucial piece of intelligence, perhaps a garbled communication intercepted weeks earlier, is suddenly and brilliantly decoded by a vigilant analyst. Or maybe one of the would-be hijackers, perhaps Syed, Jarrah, or even Mohammed Atta, experiences a profound crisis of conscience in the final days or hours and makes an anonymous tip-off with enough specific detail, flight numbers, targets, method of attack, to be taken with utmost seriousness. Imagine that on the morning of September 10th, or even very early on September 11th itself, this credible, specific threat intelligence lands on the right desks. Emergency protocols are activated at the highest levels. Airport security, already on heightened alert due to vague warnings, is massively and visibly ramped up at specific airports: Boston Logan, Newark Liberty, Washington Dulles. Cockpit doors, in this reality, already fitted with rudimentary but stronger internal deadbolts. A minor design difference adopted a year or 2 earlier after a different, smaller, hijacking incident somewhere in the world, are ordered to remain locked and barricaded under all circumstances. Perhaps the targeted flights: American Airlines Flight 11, United Airlines Flight 107, American Airlines Flight 97, and United Airlines Flight 93 are grounded due to specific bomb threats or security alerts. Or if the hijackers do manage to board, the enhanced security, alerted to the possibility of box cutters or similar small weapons, is far more meticulous. Any attempt to breach a cockpit is met with immediate resistance from crew trained in new, more assertive defense tactics, and perhaps even by undercover air marshals whose numbers were quietly increased in this timeline just weeks prior. The result? The attacks are foiled. Some hijackers might be apprehended at airport security, others subdued mid-flight before they can take control, or their targeted planes simply never take off. The morning of September 11th, 2001, in New York City, dawns bright and clear. Workers stream into the world, trade center towers, tourists head up to the observation deck, meetings take place, coffee is brewed. At the Pentagon, the day proceeds as normal. Across the nation, people go about their routines. The nearly 3,000 people who would have perished in our timeline, office workers, visitors, flight crews, passengers, brave first martyrs in this dimension simply live. They finish their workday. They commute home. They have dinner with their families. They make plans for the future. Twin towers continue to grace the Manhattan skyline, iconic symbols of commerce and resilience. The Pentagon remains untouched. The world, while still facing the threat of terrorism, is spared this specific, devastating trauma. Profound sense of vulnerability and loss that defined the aftermath of 9/11 in our world is absent here. The war on terror, as we knew it, doesn't unfold in the same way. The specific trigger for those far-reaching conflicts never occurs. The focus of counterterrorism efforts in this dimension is perhaps more on intelligence and preventative security, lessons learned from the narrowly averted plot. The decade that followed is different. The global mood less fearful, the scar on the collective psyche of a nation and the world simply isn't there. Thousands of families remain whole, their futures intact, on a September day that in this alternate reality was just another Tuesday.